let's get started here. This is like the third time I filmed this video because I just got off work and I was like, oh, I'm gonna film a video, you know, because it doesn't take any preparation at all. So, like I said, this is like the third time I filmed this, so I'm gonna actually hope that I can cohesively speak a sentence this time without stuttering and having to start all over. So that's where we're at. You know, my name is Ryan, for starters. I'm a female to male to female detransitioner, and I just got off work and I got hit with the overwhelming desire to film a video about all the things that I wish I knew before I transitioned and detransitioned, because that's what this video is about. And I have notes because I can't think straight for more than like 30 seconds. So I basically was just thinking, it's like, well, actually, let me start over. I recently detransitioned, probably like a month and a half ago, and I've been actively living detransitioned into a woman for like 2 days now, and just the search looking for information for like videos, because I mean, when I figured just like, oh shit, well maybe I detransition, I looked it up, and there's YouTube videos out there and there's a lot of good content, but I couldn't find any of the answers or things that people were talking about for things that I wanted to know. I just couldn't find anything. So I was like, well, screw it. I'll just make a video for the things that I know now that I wish I knew. And maybe it'll help somebody else down the line. You know, you never know. So a little bit of backstory about me personally. I didn't transition. I was a little weird when I first transitioned. I'll just start out with that. I didn't transition to be a guy or even think about transitioning really until I was 18, probably like 18 and a half. I was never uncomfortable with my gender. I was uncomfortable with, I'd say, my relationships with other people, which it sounds complicated and it sounds completely random. But sort of all through growing up, I had the whole identity crisis thing that I've heard a lot of other people talk about in sort of the same kinds of videos, where at first I was like, well, I don't know what's going on with me. Maybe I'm bisexual. And then I thought, I was like, okay, well, I'm not bisexual. Maybe I'm gay. And then I was like, oh, well, I just don't like anybody, which not only am I antisocial, I was like, oh, well, then I found out what asexual was. And I was like, oh, well, that kind of explains me a little bit better. A romantic asexual too. I don't like the sexy bits or the hand holding either. I'm not really very romantic, and so that kind of messed up my whole growing up. Really, I mean, it didn't really mess it up. It just really seriously confused things for me. And probably from the ages of when I was 17, probably 17 to 18, I really stuck with the asexual bits. I was like, well, this explains me the best, you know, but I wasn't satisfied with it, because, I mean, it's just me trying to, you know, hold a relationship while you're asexual too. I mean, it's really hard to expect somebody else to be in a relationship who's not asexual to kind of hold back from sex and everything like that. And that's just, that was tough too. So that part of my life, I was really jumbled up with. I wasn't happy with it. I was like, okay, there's something wrong with me. Obviously, there's got to be a solution. I was so desperate to figure out what I could do to fix it, that when I started Googling things, and I knew what transgender was, but I had never ever taken into consideration or really thought of myself in that position, or really gave it any thought, like any legitimate thought. I mean, sure, like when I was a kid, it's like, it kind of did the whole thing where it's like, oh, well, you know, it's just like if I was a guy, I'd totally grow a beard, or I like a certain brand, you know, and so I'd kind of have those thoughts, but it was never ever any like, oh, I wish I was a guy. I never had those thoughts, which I know a lot of trans people, at least people that I've seen YouTube videos on, really talk about how they had a lot of dysphoria, especially from a young age, and they always played with the boys or stuff like that from when they were like a little girl, or if you were a guy and you transitioned to a girl, you know, they usually had some sort of an issue. But I never really had that, and something that I later realized might have been something that I probably should have thought about more, is that I never had physical dysphoria. I never felt self-conscious about my chest or my lady bits. You know, it's just like, I was fine with that. I was fine with how I looked. I was fairly confident. I just wasn't happy, I guess, with my social life and kind of how things were going with me. I gotta consult the notes now because I just lost my train of thought. So yes, I was very impulsive. I was so desperate for a fix that when I first found out that it's like, oh, well, transgender might be a thing, I kind of latched onto it. I was like, oh my God, I can like, I mean, in my head, it was almost as if the information that I got made it seem like I could change who I was. And which I mean, you can to an extent. I mean, you change your name and you change your presentation, but I mean, a lot of the issues that I had with, you know, the whole asexual and whatever I was dealing with, or whatever personal issues you're dealing with that aren't related to dysphoria or something, won't go away. I'll get into that later, but I was like, oh my God, this is my fix. And so literally the moment, I think like I tried it out for a couple days, I did the whole chest binding thing, and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm somebody else. It's like almost as if my issues disappeared. It's just like, this is awesome. I'm going to do this. And so after like a few days of me figuring out that, oh my God, I might be trans, I set an appointment with Planned Parenthood, which I know a lot of people do to get hormones because it's easy, which I also think it's a problem that it's too easy, which also I will get into later. I set an appointment with them, and I had like a 2-week period of in between where I really kind of got to think about things, but I was so impatient, I was so impulsive, I was just so convinced that this is gonna fix me, this is gonna make everything better. Just those 2 weeks went by like that, and then, I mean, the next thing I knew, I was on hormones. And I think another thing, I kind of cheated. With the whole family explaining, I was like, oh, I think I'm a guy. It's like I told my parents, and they were cool with it. I got really lucky. I mean, my family in general was pretty supportive. And I was pretty antisocial, so I had like a really small friend group, but I kind of got off easy because right in the period where I was thinking about detransitioning, I was also thinking about moving, and I moved cities. I was like 4.5 hours away from anybody I knew. I moved cities. Where I am now, at first I moved, I didn't have any family or friends here. Like I didn't know anybody. I just up and left to someplace I had never been before, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make this work. And I played it kind of smart. I'm kind of proud of myself. Like the first day that I took hormones, I think it was September 29th, and was my first shot, and then I moved to where I am now, to Spokane. I live in Spokane. And then I moved, like, I think it was September 30th. And I just requested a job transfer, like new job, new everything. I didn't know anybody. And so right when I moved, I just introduced myself as Ryan, because I was on hormones. And so from the very beginning, I never had to explain to anybody, any of my coworkers, any of my friends, that I was transitioning. I never had to deal with people misgendering me because they were so used to who I was before. I never had to deal with the awkward, or, you know, it's like when you first explain, you never know how somebody's going to react when you're saying that. I mean, it's like they're your coworkers, but at the same time, it's like, shit, I'm like, am I going to have issues at work? You know, it's just, I never had to deal with that, which I was really lucky, but it's also because I moved, and I feel like I kind of cheated. But, so I moved, and then I passed after about 2 months, so I didn't really have any issues with that. My voice dropped, of course, and of course people misgendered me at first, because I was very, very new trans. You know, I just transitioned, but you know, it was kind of smooth sailing for probably about a year and a half. Yeah, and like I said, I didn't have any issues, but something that I will say that I've tried to look online for it, I've never found anything, like on like these trans forums and communities and discussions, is that yes, I presented as a guy. I might be able to do some fancy editing and pop up like a picture there of what I looked like and how I passed. But I was identifying as a guy. My voice was dropped. I didn't get misgendered by random people. Like I passed, you know, I was fine. But also like, you know, like the voice in your head, it's like how I thought of myself. Like I would almost misgender myself. I mean, it was confusing for me, and I tried to look it up and I couldn't find anything really that kind of explained what I was going through. And anytime I had asked anybody about it, they was like, "Oh, just give it time. You know, it'll sort it out with time." But I mean, that's never something that really did. Like, it's almost as if my voice, my physical voice, got deeper. And I might just sound totally nuts, and nobody else has this issue. It's just me. But I'm gonna say it anyways. But like the voice, you know, it's like that in your head that you think with. What still sounded feminine. It was my old voice and the way I thought of myself. Like when I dreamed I was a chick, I wasn't a guy. And just kind of things like that. It's just like subconsciously I still thought of myself as my old self, as a woman, instead of a guy. And that was something that I really struggled with for a long time when I was identifying as a guy, because I was like, well shit, like why isn't this changing? Like everything else seems fine, everything's going fine. Why is my lizard brain struggling with this? And so that's something that I just also dealt with, that I felt might have been an early sign that maybe this isn't for me. But afterwards, I mean, some of those things I just decided not to think about, honestly, and I know that's not very healthy. I didn't talk to a therapist ever. I had really bad experiences with therapy from a young age. And so I never really thought that talking to somebody was a good idea. And I'm not too sure on that, but that kind of just reinforces the idea that I had never actually sought professional medical help for some of these issues. And also number two, something else that I had issues with, that was probably a sign. I was never comfortable with sort of like the whole relationship dynamic. I was fine to start to try and like date, but at the same time, I didn't know how, because like when I was a cis woman, it's just like I knew how to date, you know, but when I transitioned, I was like, okay, I'm a guy now, but I wasn't comfortable dating a guy as a guy and being in a gay relationship, although that's fine. It's just in my head, thinking of myself as a guy dating a guy, that didn't compute. I wasn't attracted to that idea, if that makes sense. But at the same time, I couldn't see myself as a trans guy dating a chick either, because I also wasn't I mean, I was attracted to women, but I wasn't attracted to women. And then this kind of leads up to the realization that transitioning did not change my sexuality, which I realized afterwards, you know, a little bit too late. And it's not that I thought that, well, I guess I won't say that. I did think that. I had hoped that transitioning would fix that area of my life that I was having issues with, the whole relationship thing. And that didn't fix anything. I remember specifically having issues. That was probably the main cause of my detransition, actually, was just the idea. Like I couldn't figure it out, how that was supposed to work. But yeah, so I kind of, consulting the notes, I refused to think about it, because I was committed. I'm like, okay, I'm on hormones. I'm living, like, everybody knows me as Ryan now. It's like, I'm fully transitioned. Every part of my life has completely changed. Like, I'm sticking with it. I've legally changed my name. I've done all of this work. And honestly, I didn't really think about it because I was afraid that if I thought more about how this doesn't feel right, that I would realize that I was wrong. And then I was afraid to realize that I was wrong because that would mean that I had made a horrible mistake, and that I had changed, like irreversibly changed certain aspects of my life. And so, yeah, for like the whole year and a half, well, more like a year, I didn't really have those thoughts. Like everything was hunky-dory. I was fine for probably about 6 months. Until those kind of thoughts of like, what if I made a mistake, or what if this wasn't the right idea, kind of popped into my head. But like as soon as they did, I shut it down. I was like, do not think about it. Like those are not productive thoughts. You're not detransitioning anyways. It wouldn't work out. Just don't think about it. And I did that for probably about a year and a half. So after about a year and a half, it's just, I don't really even know what happened. I was just sitting at home. I had gotten off work and I had just been thinking about it. And it's just, I'd probably been thinking about it for a couple days in a row. Just this persistent nagging feeling of just like this, something doesn't add up. Like this just doesn't feel right. I didn't know what to do about it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to think about what about this doesn't feel right. It's like, okay, there's obviously something that I need to address, so I'm gonna figure it out. And so I sat down and I really thought about it, and then I kind of asked myself, it's just like, do I want to go back? I mean, if I could, in a perfect world, would I, like, do I want to go back to being a chick? And my first kind of warning sign that I might not be trans in the first place was that my answer wasn't immediately no. I was just like, well, if I could fix my other issues, I would. And then I'd think like, well, I mean, if I could, and constantly I'd have thoughts like where, man, it's like, I wish I could clone myself and have it both ways. You know, it's like, I wish I could be a chick and a guy and just, go back and forth, so I could have both. Because there were certain aspects of being a woman that I really missed. I would just catch myself thinking, and it's like, oh my god, it's like women, they can do so much. I miss doing things with my hair. I missed doing my makeup. I missed looking good. That was what really probably sparked everything else. Was that I just wasn't satisfied with how I looked as a guy. Because as a chick, I passed pretty well. I thought I looked decent. I looked good a couple times, it's like, I don't want to say that I was the most attractive person in the world, but, I was happy with what I looked. And like I stated before, I didn't have any dysphoria. Like, I wasn't unsatisfied with how I physically looked. And that's something that I kind of just realized. I was like, man, it's just like, I never had issues with that in the first place. And that's also, and then what I realized after that was that, with the whole asexual thing, transitioning did not fix my problems. I was still, because I had tried to go on some dates and I had tried to work something out, and it just was not working. I just couldn't figure it out, and it was just the same issues that I was having before, and it didn't fix anything. It didn't change my sexuality. It didn't change what I thought towards other people. It didn't make me more romantic. It didn't make me want to hang out with other people anymore. Like, I was still the same antisocial, kind of hermit that I was, and I was fine with that. But being a guy just, it was fine, but it's just, it wasn't what I had expected. Let's just say that. And so then that kind of lit up kind of the light bulb, being like, oh my god, what if I really fucked up? I might have seriously made a mistake. And then, because I had finally allowed myself to think about it, it's like, okay, what if I really did screw up? Like, what if I'm not actually trans? Like, I've changed every aspect of my life to essentially be a completely different person. And if I were to admit that I'm wrong, then I fucked up. Like, I've screwed up royally. And then afterwards, you really have to think, or I had to think, it's like, okay, well, now that I've admitted that, okay, maybe I'm not trans, I've screwed up. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to detransition? I mean, my voice was dropped, and then I was like, well, shit, I mean, if I detransition now, I'd essentially have to go through what every other trans woman has gone through. I mean, I had started to grow facial hair. I caught it pretty early on. I don't have a beard. I don't have to deal with that, but there were some, I have to shave. But just the thoughts of like, well, shit, no, I've permanently changed my parts of my body, some things that are never going to go back to the way they were. And that part just, that really freaked me out. And the whole possibly not passing thing, my voice was a huge thing too. That was something that I almost considered, knowing that I'm not trans, but still identifying as a guy anyways, because the idea of transitioning and then not passing as a woman either, even though I am biologically a female, was not appealing. I didn't want to do that. And so I took probably a week or two to think about it, and just really look up, just get more information on it. And I was thinking, it was like, I can't be the only one who's done this. I was like, there has to be some sort of information out there. And I looked, there was some videos, definitely really good ones. I can't remember the name of the one chick that I watch on YouTube. She's probably the most watched video about detransition. Like, if you Google detransition, her video will probably pop up. She's got like bob hair, almost like me, but blonde. If you Google it, you'll probably know who I'm talking about. And I just don't remember her name. I should have wrote it down, but that, and I looked at it. She's got a lot of really good content that helped me out a lot. But also something that threw me was that her voice was deeper, and she sounds fine. But just for me, the idea of just detransitioning was kind of like, it's like a foreign thought. I mean, it was kind of scary. I just didn't know what I was gonna do. But in the end, I took a few weeks to think about it. And in that, like, what I'd also suggest is, if you're confused and you're thinking about detransitioning, be it whether you're a guy or a girl, I mean, I would experiment around. It's what I did. I bought some makeup, and I made up a total bullshit excuse to my coworker, because y'all went on a roller coaster ride just now. Apologies. Gotta set this up again. Whoop. Well, I'm just gonna hold it like there. Okay. But also, and I made up like a bullshit excuse to my coworker, because a lot of my coworkers, I passed the ball that whenever we got new people and they didn't know that I was trans, and I didn't have a problem with talking about it. Like, if somebody knew that I was trans and they had a question, I'd be more than happy to, like, I wasn't shy, I wasn't self-conscious. It's like I'll just say it. And I'd rather people ask me an embarrassing question and have me give them the right answer and kind of have them be correctly informed than have them go around thinking something that's not right. It's just like, just ask me and I'll tell you. Just don't, or go around thinking something and then telling somebody else something and having just everybody think the wrong thing. So I never had an issue with that. But and so where I was, remember what I was talking about, how I can't keep a cohesive thought for more than like 30 seconds? I messed around with it. I was like, okay, well, if I am detransitioning back to a woman, I wanted to know what I would look like. I was afraid of not passing, of looking weird, and I was like, oh my god, what am I going to do about this? So I went and I bought some makeup, and I told my coworker, because this is COVID-19 season right now, we're all quarantined. I was like, well, I got to get my guy voice, like, oh, well, I got some, my roommates are challenging me or something to like a makeup challenge, and or I said it was for my roommate or something, and or whatever reason you can come up with if you don't feel comfortable just saying you're buying makeup for yourself. It's just bullshit. I mean, it's like, you don't know anybody anything else. Like, you don't know anybody in explanations. Like, you don't know people. So I bought a bunch of makeup, and then I went and I did my makeup. I remember, so I was in the bathroom for like half an hour at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, none of my roommates knew that I was transgender either, which, I mean, I might make a separate video on like living incognito with roommates who you live with, and kind of how to do that. But yeah, so I sat in the bathroom, I locked the door, I was thinking, oh my God, like, none of my roommates know that I'm trans, they all think that I'm a dude. The worst thing that I could possibly think of in that moment was having somebody walk in with me doing my makeup, and they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Because they were all very, very straight guys, which was another kind of issue that I was having with detransition, which I'll get into later. But yeah, experiment around with that stuff. I mean, if you're really thinking about detransitioning and you're wondering, I mean, it's like, makeup can do miracles, which I learned really early on. And I already knew that I could probably swing something with makeup and kind of help me passing. Hair is also a big thing. This is a wig. If you didn't already know, because I'm only 2 months transition. So I have a really short, not really short, it's probably down to my nose right now. I'm growing it out, but I have like short brown hair. And when I first did my makeup without hair, I felt like a clown. I'll just say that, because I didn't get the right shade. I didn't really do, I mean, I did my makeup just fine. I look decent. But if you do your makeup and you're thinking, oh my God, this looks like shit, like, I would never pass as a woman, you just get totally like discouraged. Don't worry, because I got online, like, I changed my mind. I bounced back and forth. I was like, okay, well, maybe I am gonna detransition, and then I did my makeup, and then with short guy hair, and I didn't look like I thought I would. I didn't think I passed that well, and it freaked me out. And I was like, oh my God, I can never detransition. I'll never pass. Like, this is a nightmare. And then for like a week, I decided, nope, I'm just going to stick it out. You know what? Screw it. I'm adaptable. I'm a bit of a chameleon. I can figure it out. I can live my life as a guy. I was, you know, whatever. I can do it. And then after a week, it's just the nagging feelings like, oh my God, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I went and I bought a wig, just a cheapy one, just like a $50 wig. And that really kind of changes things. It changed things for me. Like, the hair really made me look different. And I feel like if you go online and you look at like gender change makeups, or like guys doing their makeup to look like a woman, or women doing it to look like a guy, the hair plays a big part of it. So, I mean, don't get discouraged if you don't look how you thought you were going to look, because anything can change. But I gotta consult the notes. So, yeah, I mean, and then once I got the hair, and I kind of took a trip to like 2 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, this is like what I used to look like. Maybe this isn't so bad after all. And so once I hit the point where it's like, okay, maybe if I wait, or if I, there we go, get off testosterone for a while, and I let my body kind of, because I know your fat redistributes, you know, it's just like you'll start to look more feminine or more masculine, depending on which one you're coming from. Things will start to change. But another thing that I was more worried about, some insecurities, was my voice. I was like, oh my God, it's like, sure, maybe I could do my makeup and I can look feminine and I can pass, but it's like, I was afraid that it's like, oh my God, I'm going to be like helping, and especially work was a big thing for me too, especially since nobody knew that I was trans in the first place. Not only explaining that not only am I trans, but I'm also detransitioning, I was not looking forward to. But I was afraid that somebody's like, oh man, can I help? Like, where's, like, in my head, it was a lot worse. I was picturing it as a lot worse than it actually was. And like, I was overthinking it so much, which I'll kind of explain more later. But like, I was so afraid that somebody was going to ask for help or something, and then they'd look at me and it's like, oh, it's a chick. Then I'll be like, that product's down aisle 12. And then be like, oh my God, that's a dude. But that was probably my number one fear, and that's also something that I realized probably would never go back to the way it was. That's a permanent change, is your voice. So if you are thinking of transitioning, first, you know, just transitioning, I'd really think long and hard and probably see a mental health professional. Because if you really are trans, they're probably, depending on, if you go to an actual, somebody who just wants to help you out the best for you, they're not probably going to talk you out of it. They just probably want to make sure that you're actually trans, so you can, you know, not irreversibly F up your body if you're making a horrible, horrible mistake. So that was something that I was really insecure about, was my voice. And it is a lot deeper. I'm moving the camera a lot, I'm sorry. And it is a lot deeper than it was originally. Like, it was really bad at first. But I did some also looking up. Also something like, if you can't find information on detransition, I looked, since I was transitioning from male to female back, I looked up advice on people who were born male transitioning to female, and kind of what they did to like raise their voice and make their voice sound more feminine, because not every trans woman sounds like a guy. It's like a lot of people have deeper voices, but and I was like, okay, there's obviously got to be some sort of trick that I don't know about. And there's things called voice training, and I think just practice makes perfect, you know. So that can change. It's a permanent change, but it's not the end of the world. Just give it time, is what I'd say. Consulting the notes. Oh, passing voice. Coworkers. Also, one thing that I was absolutely batshit like terrified of was transitioning at work, because like I stated before, I cheated. I never had to explain and go through the whole telling my coworkers I'm transitioning thing, and then expect them to call me something different and go with, I mean, I was so afraid of being so extra, and being like, oh my gosh, just like, I'm Mike, but I want you to call me Ashley. And it's not a big deal, but I was thinking it was. I was blowing things out of the water. It's one thing that I'd probably say is that if you think something is going, like, oh my god, this is not going to work, it's going to be horrible, it's going to be so weird, you're overthinking it. It's not. Don't freak out. I freaked out. Probably one of the things that was the main thing that was holding me back from detransitioning in the first place was, one, my living situation and my roommates, because I absolutely did not feel comfortable living in a place where I was and transitioning. Like, the people there were nice, but it's just like, that would just make it way too weird. And the second thing was going to be work and transitioning with my coworkers and expecting everybody else to call me something different. And oh my god, I'm like, oh my god. It's like, I felt like I couldn't take myself seriously if I were to come into work with a full face of makeup from just nothing, you know, like, just come in almost as like looking like a completely different person, which I did. And I was freaking out. That was something that I was really worried about, was transitioning at work. And at that point, I had fully decided, it's like, okay, this is something that I have to do. So I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just get a different job. I'll figure it out. I'll save up like a couple $1,000s so I have money for rent for a few months while I transition, and then I'll just get a new job as a new person, like I did the first time. Kind of chicken out of going through the whole transition thing. And then I realized, it's like, well, and currently where I am at this point in time, everybody's quarantined and all the businesses are shut down because it's 2020, this is this COVID thing. And I realized, just like, okay, if I quit my job now, I have a good job. I work at Walgreens, and I'm a shift lead management position. So I'm kind of, I have a small little group of people that I am occasionally in charge of. And if I were to quit that job now, and try to get a different job, I mean, there's no guarantee that I'd get another job. I mean, with everybody closed right now, and I most likely would not be making the same amount of money. And that was a big influence for me. So I was like, okay, well, if I can't get a new job and I'm gonna detransition, I've got to at least talk to my manager or something and just let him know that this might be something I would do. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll get a transfer. And I feel like if you really feel that uncomfortable, with the people you're working with and feel like it would become a hostile work environment, then I would absolutely look at, if you can, transfer to a different district or wait and get another job, because I mean your safety obviously comes first. But I got lucky. I'm good friends with all of my coworkers and everybody I work with, and my manager's really nice. And so I just kind of sat him down and kind of explained, it's like, okay, I'm probably going to detransition. I'm going to start to look a lot different. And so he basically, because I told him I wanted to probably transfer because I didn't want to explain that I was going to switch. I didn't want to do anything like that. I didn't want to go through the whole transition at work. But he convinced me. He's like, what? You're going to leave just because you're transitioning? And I was like, oh, you don't think it's that big of it? Like, you don't think it would be weird if I were to come in, like, looking completely different? And then he's like, well, no. It's like, it's only weird if you make it weird, which is very, very true. Like, you're in control. It's like, if you're transitioning at work, like, you're in charge of your own, you're steering your own ship. I mean, nobody else, like, you can't control what anybody else does, you can control what you do. So if you make it weird, it's absolutely gonna be weird. But I mean, if you walk in there and you're just like, okay, I'm doing this, you know, kind of like, deal with it or get out, you know? It's like, you don't, I mean, those are like your coworkers. Oh, it's falling down. Like, and they may be some of like your friends, but also like those are just people that you work with. I mean, it's just like, screw them. You don't owe them any sort of explanation. I mean, it's 2020. You can walk in like full drag one day and then walk in with a beard the next. I mean, and they might ask you questions or they might look weird, but it's just like, you don't owe them anything. You don't owe them an explanation. You can do whatever you want, and they can't say anything. And if they do, complain. And then they will be made to shut up about it. And besides, I mean, really, I mean, do you think that somebody is really gonna make things hard for you? And in reality, what I had to kind of realize is that I was stressing out thinking that everybody is just going to be weird and everybody's going to be weirded out, and I'm not going to be, it's just going to make things hard at work, and then it's just, I'm going to have to deal with being misgendered. I mean, in reality, I mean, it kind of sucks, but like, especially with your coworkers, you're like a blip in their life. Like, they're not thinking about you. They're not concerned with what you're doing. It's just like, they have their own lives. I mean, like, how often do you think about like somebody you work with randomly? I mean, it's just like, I don't really think, in my spare time, I don't really think about my coworkers at all. Like, I have my own life and they have their own life too. So, I mean, if you want to do whatever you want to do, I mean, I feel like you should just go for it. Because really, I mean, they don't care. I mean, nobody gives a shit. So if you're gonna shave your head or, I mean, do whatever you're gonna do, I would just, you know, I mean, just do it. I mean, and if they give you hell, fuck them. I mean, not literally. I mean, unless you're into that, which, I mean, go for it. But, I mean, that's something that I really had to realize, was that nobody gives a shit. It's only weird if you make it weird. And just persistence, you know, I kind of had to decide, it's like, all right, well, if I'm gonna transition, you know, it's time to nut up or shut up, you know, and just do it. And, you know, not literally nut up. In my case, it's the opposite. But I just kind of had to go through with it. And so step one for me was just getting out of the house, looking with my makeup done and everything like that, because I was so self-conscious about it at first. I was like, oh my god, how am I supposed to go out in public looking like this? I got a notification on my phone. I gotta make a different video because I'm running out of storage space. This is a long-ass video. Oh my god. But, consulting the notes. Let me see. Yeah. Just nobody cares. I mean, just, you know, you do you. But while I'm on the subject, one of my other fears was ironically going back to being cis, but sounding trans because my voice was deeper. Which, I feel like your voice always sounds different to you. And I talk to people now, like I have conversations with coworkers and it's, you know, it's like nobody really bats an eye or looks at me twice, except people who know me already. It's like, oh, so you're doing a new thing now. It's like, yeah. And you don't have to explain it if you don't want to. You know, it's just like, if somebody asks, it's like, new look. That's all. Trying something new. Or you don't even have to say that. I mean, it's just, it's like, I mean, like I said before, you don't owe anybody any explanation. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Something else that I really was kind of freaked out was that a part of me was ashamed to detransition, more along the lines of just admitting that maybe I had made a mistake, because I didn't want to admit that I was wrong, that I wasn't trans, because I felt like, oh my god, like that's horrible. It's like, how could somebody make that drastic of a mistake and not know your own identity? Because if I detransition and it's like, oh, well, I'm just not trans, somebody's like, well, how can you not be trans? But that's something that I just kind of had to get over. I mean, it's just like, I'm a year and a half into being trans, so I mean, if you've made a mistake so far, I mean, you're sorry, you're shit out of luck. I've already transitioned, and if I decided that I haven't, then yep, I made a mistake, it screwed up. Fine. Just, there's nothing you can do to change it, so, or nothing you can go back in time, so you just gotta deal with it. So, my suggestions are, if you're freaking out and thinking about detransitioning, or thinking that work is going to be a nightmare, that you're not going to look trans, or you're not going to look normal, or how you want, you're going to sound weird. I mean, it's like, you are absolutely overthinking it. I mean, the first day that I walked into work and I talked to my coworker, which I'm more close with, and I mean, the very first day, I mean, I went like that. There was no adjustment period. I walked in before work. I wasn't working, and I asked her in makeup. I didn't even know if anybody would recognize me, because I had my makeup done. But she did. She recognized me. And she's like, oh, damn, it's just like, you look different. And it wasn't a bad thing. And then she took me around and introduced me. And some of the coworkers that I thought would react kind of negatively actually reacted really positively. And it wasn't really an issue. And then some of the other coworkers that I thought, well, I'm going to have to explain that I was trans and that I'm detransitioning. Some of them already knew that I was trans. And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I kind of wish you would have told me about that. There were so many missed opportunities for, like, opposite dick jokes that I could have made. That part, I was frustrated. I joke about things. It's how I cope. But, and then my one coworker, who I thought would probably react really negatively, he's kind of like the big sports jock, really straight. He has a girlfriend, and I was kind of like the guy friend, because I was a guy, and I was like, well, shit, I'm like one of the guys now. How is he going to react to me going back, hopping the fence? But no, I mean, they were all really, really supportive. And I haven't really encountered anything negative so far. And I mean, and it really just reinforced the fact that I was freaking out over nothing. And then I was absolutely overthinking everything. I was blowing everything out of proportion. Other people's worlds do not revolve around you. And so 99% of the time, somebody, I mean, when they saw that I was changing it up, you know, they were like, oh, so like, okay. And then like a day later, it was old news. I mean, it's like, nobody cares. You were freaking out over nothing. So if you're transitioning or you're whatever you're doing, I mean, just go for it. I mean, you're freaking out. Don't worry about it. Like, maybe for the first day or two, it might be, like, if you're thinking it'll be weird, it'll be an adjustment, definitely. But, I mean, after, like, a couple of days, I mean, it'll just be the new normal. So if you can survive a couple of days of awkwardness, if that, I mean, you'll be fine. I mean, like, you've gotten through worse, so you can do it. Consulting the notes again. Let me see. I'm just gonna have to make a different video on some of the other stuff, like side effects and stuff like that, but that's kind of the start of my story. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I think I've been blind as bad, I can't even see my own screen. I've been filming for 44 minutes now. Oh my god, this was supposed to be like a 10 to 20 minute video. Jesus fucking freaking Christ, I'm gonna get demonetized. Yeah, so that's that. I could make another video on like how I lived with roommates from the very beginning without them knowing I was trans and keeping that a secret. I could probably make a video on, like a more in-depth video on like how work was and how I handled that. And going out in public again and doing makeup again and kind of makeup tricks, you know, to make yourself look a little bit more natural. But yeah, that's just my suggestions for detransitioning and what I wish I knew. The main thing is that if you think it's gonna go horrible, it's not. Nothing's permanent. You're absolutely overthinking it. Just do it. You know, nut up or shut up. Just, if you're gonna do it, you gotta do it. Just get it over with. And then I promise it will be easier afterwards. But just make sure it's what you want to do. You know, don't transition and then think that it's the wrong decision and detransition and realize that you were actually trans and you were freaking out. Which would actually probably be easier. But it's probably really hard on your family and friends to transition and detransition and then retransition. They'll probably just think that you're crazy or have a multiple personality disorder. So, you know, just wait and think things through before you do anything, because it causes a lot of issues down the line. So, that's my thoughts, you know. I was mostly just a ramble for like an hour, 45 minutes. So, I don't know. I might make another video though. So, bye.